Hi there guys, welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Continuing on with my 10-year franchise reviews today. This episode will be focusing on the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if you've not watched the first episode in this series, what I'm going to be doing is breaking down the last 10 years worth of drafts, as well as a quick overview of the records and the sort of coaching changes that have taken place over that time. You'll get to the format of the drafting. I'll explain that once I get to that section of the episode. I really hope you enjoy these as much as I enjoyed doing the research. I found it really enlightening and really think these are going to be some interesting videos. I hope you enjoy them. So, as I say, this episode will be focusing on the Steelers, of course, being very successful over the last decade, compiling a 103 and 57 record in that time frame. Fantastic stuff. Mike Tomlin has been a wonderful head coach for this franchise, given great stability. I know there was a little bit of a doubt over him after a couple of 8-8 seasons because that's how high expectations are in Pittsburgh. In this time frame, 7 playoff appearances, 5 division titles, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and 1 Super Bowl title. That's a great decade, cracking the 100-win barrier in 10 years. That's consistent quality and success. So definitely one of the elite franchises in the league. Constantly a threat to make the playoffs. Ben Roethlisberger's had a great career. As long as he's there at this point in time, you have to think this team is going to be a contender. Have done a really good job restocking through the draft defensively. They were an elite unit, had a couple of years to rebuild that side of the ball, built a great offense to sort of supplement that. Maybe had a little bit of luck there, but drafting, if this has taught me anything, and hopefully you guys will see this in the weekly review, is that the top teams are better at drafting, as much of a crapshoot as it is. So moving on to the last 10 years worth of drafts for this franchise. So the format here is I'm going to go through rounds 1 through 3 because these are the 3 rounds where you're expecting to get at least solid contributors and starters. Anything beyond that is a bonus. I'll be evaluating whether that pick was a success or a solid pick and giving the team a score of +1. If the pick worked out to be, fine and, unspectacular, there will be no score attached. And if the pick is just a waste and a bust, they will attract a score of -1. Picks from rounds 4 through 7 that are a success, and believe me, there really are not many. It's frankly shocking. Those picks will be designated value picks and add a score of +1 respectively, and we'll have a total at the end. So beginning with the 2007 draft, the first round pick for the Steelers at number 15 was Lawrence Timmons, who's just joined the Miami Dolphins after a very successful career with the Steelers. Being one of the backbones of that defense, particularly through the rebuild phase, I think this pick was definitely a solid pick, even though he's only made 1 Pro Bowl, which I was quite surprised. I thought he might have made more. Perhaps a bit of an underrated player throughout his career. Definitely a solid pick. In the second round, Lamar Woodley, who made 1 Pro Bowl in his time with the Steelers, was a very, very solid starter for them. Hasn't had much success in the sort of latter end of his career, kind of fell off there. But for a second rounder, they got great value. Was a very solid starter for them for a long time. Him and James Harrison terrorized quarterbacks for a period of time. That's another very solid pick. In the third round, Matt Spaeth, the tight end, he's provided solid depth and a reasonable blocking tight end for a long period of time. Unspectacular pick, nothing there. And in the 5th, William Gay, the cornerback, he provided great value, was a starter for a while, perfectly solid player for a 5th round pick, massive success. So he goes down as a value pick. In the 2008 draft, the first round pick was running back Rashad Mendenhall with the 23rd overall pick. I'm grading first rounders a little more harshly. I think we'd have to say that this was a poor selection for the Steelers. He was a bust. In the second round, Lima Swede, wide receiver from Texas, definitely a bust. Did nothing in his career. In the third round, Bruce Davis, a linebacker. I don't even remember this fellow. So that goes down as a bust. Didn't do anything in his career. But then in the sixth, to salvage something from the draft, Ryan Mundy, the safety, had a reasonably good career, especially for a sixth rounder. He goes down as a solid value pick. Moving on to the 2009 draft, we've got first pick with the 32nd pick in the draft, Ziggy Hood. He's got to go down as a bust. If he was a third rounder, maybe I'd have been a bit more willing, but for a first rounder, had no real impact. I thought he was a poor starter whilst playing, so he goes down as a bust. In the second round pick, third round, Craig Urbick, just to back up. O-lineman, no marks there. In the third, Mike Wallace, wide receiver, solid pick, a solid starting wide receiver, top end deep threat, bit one dimensional, but for a third rounder, very productive. That goes down as a good pick. And Keenan Lewis, the cornerback, also a good pick. He's had a very, very solid career in the NFL. The 2010 draft, this is one, in my opinion, of the better classes. I will be doing a countdown at the end of the week of my favourite classes in this time frame. So the first round is Mike Pouncey with the 18th pick. He's had 2 All-Pros, 5 Pro Bowls. I think he's always been slightly overrated. Don't get me wrong, he's a very good player. But I felt Alex Mack was a better player than him for some of those years. But not going to be too fussy. This was a solid pick. When he's been healthy, he's been one of the better centres in the league. It's exactly what you want from a first-round pick. Solid pick there. Bust in round 2 with Jason Worrells, the outside backer. Didn't really do anything in his career. Bust. Third round, Emmanuel Sanders, the wide receiver. Really good pick there. He in Denver now, had a very solid career. Good player, good pick. And one of the great picks of the last decade. In the 6th round, getting Antonio Brown, the all-pro receiver, 3 all-pros, 5 Pro Bowls. One of the best between him and Julio over the last 3 years. The debate is who has been the best of those two. Record-setting player. Incredible value. Obviously this one goes down as an absolute home run. So that's 3 high quality starters they managed to pull out of that draft. That's a superb job. Moving on to the 2011 draft, Cam Hayward with the 31st pick, the D lineman. Bit of a slow start to his career, but I think he's come on the last few years. Was injured for most of last season, but I think he's a solid player. Solid pick for a player at the end of round 1. In the second, Marcus Gilbert, the offensive tackle. Solid pick. He's been a decent tackle for them. Had some injury problems, but I'm not going to hold them against him. He's a perfectly reasonable player. And in the third, Curtis Brown, the defensive back. He was a bust. I don't think he did anything in his time in the league. 2012 draft. First round pick, number 24, David DeCastro. I remember this one well because I really liked him coming out of college. And he's lived up to that hype. 1 All-Pro, 2 Pro Bowls. Great pick. One of the top guards in football right now. Second round, Mike Adams, the offensive tackle. Was a bit of depth. Could probably make him a bust, but I've decided to say meh with that one. Although, really probably should be a bust. I may adjust the score at the end. It's my video, and frankly, having just seen that I only gave that, I may have been wrong there. Sean Spence, outside linebacker in the third. Didn't even remember this guy. Did nothing with his career. Bust. In the 7th, Kelvin Beachum, the offensive tackle. He's had injury problems throughout his career, but he has actually been a pretty good player when he's healthy. In particular, for a 7th rounder, especially considering what a struggle teams are having at the moment. Getting offensive tackles, that has to go down as a value pick. The 2013 draft, Jarvis Jones, the outside linebacker, just signed with the Cardinals. 17th pick, he's been a bust. Did absolutely nothing in his time in Pittsburgh. That's disappointing. Thought that was a great pick at the time it was made. In the second, another home run pick, Le'Veon Bell, the running back. Probably the best running back in football right now. Definitely goes down as a home run there. And Marcus Wheaton in the third, the wide receiver. That goes down as a mediocre pick. The 2014 draft, we've got Ryan Shazier in the first round with the 15th pick. made a Pro Bowl, was fantastic last year, has had some injuries, but I think that's a really solid pick. I think he looks like one of the top young linebackers in football. Great player, solid pick. Stephon Tuitt, the defensive end in round 2. I think that goes down as a fairly solid pick. He's been really came on last year. I think he's become quite a decent player. Good value in round 2. Third round, Dry Archer, the wide receiver. He's been a bust. And in the 4th, Martavis Bryant, who I've got to put as a value pick because he's obviously suspended last year. But if he comes back this year and can continue to play well, I've got to put it as solid. It's good value in the 4th at the end of the day. If it was any higher, I'd probably have it as mediocre at this point in time with, that caveat. Then we've got the 2015 draft, Bud Dupree at 22nd. I think he really came on this year. I'm happy to judge that as a solid pick at this point in time. I think he's going to continue to develop and get better. Good player. Golson in the 2nd round, nothing yet. It's gone down as mediocre at this point. It's a bit too early for me. Jesse James in the 5th. That is a value pick. Can't argue with that one. He showed some things this year, especially for a 5th rounder. That's a good job. And someone called Sammy Coates in the 3rd. I'm on the fence with this one, edging towards bust. His hands are just not particularly good, one-dimensional player, but undecided. Not put him down as a bust at this point in time. And then finally, last season's draft. I've been a little generous here, as I say in the Browns video, and I'll continue to state throughout. Most of the last 2 years' drafts, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm not willing to make a judgment on a lot of these players. If they've only been in the league 1-2 years, some of them haven't even seen the field, and that might just simply be they're developing. That's how it is. However, their 1st round pick, Artie Burns, the corner, who they selected 25th, I think he looked solid last year. I think this is looking like it's going to be a good pick. If he continues to develop, happy to say that's a solid pick at this point. And the same with the other defensive back in round 2, Sean Davis. He played really well last year, I think. He looks like he could be a very, very good player. Then we've got Anthony Hargrave in the 3rd. Hasn't done anything at this point. Not marking them down for that. So, breaking down what they have done. We've got 13 solid players in the first 3 rounds and 6 value picks. Some of them, absolutely fantastic stuff. That's just 13 solid. In total, 24 positive players. 24. That's a great job, and only 7 busts. So, if you want to know why the Steelers have been consistently good, that says it there. They've totaled out a plus 17 score, which is one of the absolute highest grades that I've given. It is very hard to argue with. They've done a really good job in the 1st round. 10 picks there. Haven't done a breakdown for them for their 1st, but we're looking at solid, 1 bust, 2 busts, 3 busts, and everyone else has turned out solid. That's a really good job. 7 and 3. You'd take that. Most teams haven't done nearly as good a job as this lot. There it is. 7 good picks. That's just, that's why this is one of the top teams in the NFL. Great job, Steelers. Not really too much more to say on it. This roster is currently really, really solid. Expect them to continue. They can afford to bring players along slowly. Of course, they've got great franchise stability. That always helps. Even if they've started to shift up what the defense is doing a little bit, that's starting to pay dividends for them. This is a team that has shown how to build a roster. Never very active in free agency. Developed through the draft. It's worked for them. If you can draft players as effectively as this, you will be a great NFL franchise. Good score. I think it really demonstrates, the difference between a team like this and the Browns. So, what do you guys think? Have I been overly generous with the Steelers? Do you disagree with any of these grades? Feel free to comment below. Get in touch with me on Facebook. Whatever means, I will do my best to respond to all of you. thank you very, very much for listening. It has been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed doing the research for this series. I hope you find these informative and interesting. Check out, the Facebook, the Patreon, all that stuff. It's all thoroughly appreciated. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. I really love when people do all that stuff. Good times. And, check out some more of the videos if you enjoyed this one. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for checking me out, and go Bucks.